In the global village of conflicting ideologies and complexities, understanding systems and schemes through awareness and social reconstruction becomes expedient.
They never told you how you offended them?
I'm not on trial, so I can't go before.
Join the radio man, Edmond Obilo, on state affairs for local and international politics, security, extensive economic analysis, interviews, and world power play.
Nigerians must choose the path they want to follow. Follow the same looters and sponsors of violence who control the political structures or encourage the formation of a new leadership team.
Be a global citizen and join the radio revolution on State Affairs. State Affairs with Edmond Obilo. Radio just got deeper. State Affairs with Edmond Obilo is live.
So let me welcome you to another class of politics and power. A class where we learn and unlearn. My name is Edmond Obilo. The program is State Affairs, coming to you from State Affairs Studio here in Ibadan. Are you in the UK? What is going on? You want to tell me? Are you in Israel? What is going on? You want to let us know? So you can send in messages as well, unravel some of the issues before us. It's always a pleasure to read from you. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. So you can also call to join the discourse. The numbers are pinned to this broadcast. What are we talking today? Remember that in 2015, about 6 months after Buhari was sworn in as president, there was a military onslaught against the Shite movement in Zaria. Some call it bloodbath, and it started from the 12th to the 14th of December 2015. The quarrel started in a road clash between members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, IMN, and the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff, General Tukur Buratai. The Shite group, during a procession, blocked the road Nigeria's army chief was riding on. He was on an official visit to the town. The military at the time claimed that the roadblock was mounted to ease the assassination of the army chief, who escaped from the scene after soldiers dislodged the disciples of Ibrahim El Zakzaky. The army on the same day returned to teach the Shite a bitter lesson, taking out some of them in the process. So that is the core of today's discourse. Let's reflect on that subject. Let's go into the past so that we don't forget. Let's examine the past so that we'll learn from them. So that is the core of today's broadcast. and come with me as I take you through the lecture. The lines are there. You can always call in to make your intervention. It's about Nigeria. It's about how far we have gone as a country. As I explore the subject, let me make this following point. It's about the signs of development. And when I talk about the signs of development, I also talk about the politics and management of issues and events in the country. I'm not unawares that Galileo Galilei initiated the study of dynamics and physics. I'm also not unawares that Sir Isaac Newton formulated the basic laws of motion. What also amazes me is that a body will continue in its present state of rest, or if it's in motion, will continue to move with uniform speed in a straight line unless it is acted upon by force. If Newton's first law remained undisputed, can it be said that Nigeria will continue to move with a uniform speed in the straight line of poverty and violence unless it is acted upon by a positive force? Are more powerful brakes not required to stop a heavy lorry than a light car moving with the same speed? When a ball gets to its maximum height, its velocity becomes zero. If you dispute this claim, then tell me, where do you expect the ball to go to by the time it gets to the maximum height? Hey, if you've done science in the past, you would know that the rate of change of momentum of a body is directly proportional to the applied force and takes place in the direction in which the force acts. Therefore, if m is mass and a acceleration and F is force, it means F equals mass times acceleration. Okay, let's convert this formula into a political formula. If F becomes foundation, not force, and M becomes movement, not mass, and A remains acceleration, it means with the required acceleration, a movement of change will give Nigeria a new foundation that is equal to F. The change I talk about is about the consciousness and realization to building a great nation, and it is the duty of all. It is not really policies that messed up Nigeria, but politics, the desperate and deadly competition for power. No doubt, the powerful blocks of the political class have primitively acquired the Nigerian state, leading to the deployment of extremism in the exercise of power. One of the consequences of the hijacking by the hegemonic social classes is exclusive politics in a rather violent form. This is where the El Zakzaky subject comes in. But let me remind you that Claude Ake, that late Nigerian scholar, captures one of the reasons for the nagging crisis of the Nigerian state when he said that a society where a high degree of economic inequality exists must necessarily be repressive. Did you get that? A society where a high degree of economic inequality exists must necessarily be repressive. He says those who are economically privileged tend to be interested in preserving the existing social order. Take note of that point. Those who are economically privileged tend to be interested in preserving the existing social order. Is that what you see in Nigeria? Welcome to this class, the class of politics and power. Let me see if you are saying anything on the show. And let me see who is also watching the program. Do not forget, we run the program every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we start the show from 2 p.m. every Monday. Tell your friends that the Radio Man is on 4 times in a week: Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. But on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll run the program from 2 p.m. West African time. On Saturday, the program starts from 8 a.m. and that is on Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. State Affairs Studio is created for history, politics, and power. Last week we dwelt on the first and second military coups in Nigeria. If you missed those editions, go on my YouTube account. Go on YouTube, search for E. Obilo at E. Obilo on YouTube, and you can listen to past editions of the program. Subscribe to the YouTube account and also leave your comments. On Monday, I looked at a subject, and the subject was one that took us back into history. I started with a state of our own. Then, after breaking down that lecture by Egusa Osagai, I then used the lecture to reflect on the life and time of Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's former leader. Today, we are reflecting on the Shite movement in Nigeria, So that is a recent history. It's a recent history. Let's go into it. Come with me. I'll start from the international scene. Let me create a background to the story. Kenny Adewale, thank you for joining the broadcast. Anthony Collins, thank you for joining the broadcast. Omotayo Nobamiro, I'm happy to see you again here. Radio Man is remembering me of physics. Yes, physics. Physics class, you remember? Yes, physics is a beautiful subject. I still read physics. I still have my Nekon and Parker. Yes, I have my textbooks. I still have a Babio of chemistry. You know, my first degree was electrical and electronics engineering. That was my first degree. But later, while I was studying engineering, I had interest in the arts. You know, my friends were wondering what was wrong with me at the time. I would go and buy books in law and political science. So after graduation, I decided to explore the arts more. Luckily for me, as a young secondary school student, I wrote science and arts. So I also wrote literature, government, and history. So I had other papers. You know. So veering from science to the arts was quite easy for me. I was used to it. So I later enrolled to study politics and international relations for a fresh degree, a BSc. So I graduated with a BSc in politics and international relations. I made first class. I would later proceed to have a postgraduate diploma in theater art. You know, communication is art. After having a postgraduate diploma in communication, in theater art rather, I proceeded to have a master's degree in communication and language arts, what some called mass communication. I would later also bag a BSc in political science. Are you waiting to celebrate with me once I bag my PhD in political science? So I have created this class in my resource center as a form of education, deep radio education, education of the mind, history, politics, and power. So I just gave you in a nutshell my profile. Remember the Cold War? The Cold War redefined the word. The Cold War prepared the world for extremism as we presently see in the Middle East and many parts of the world. The Cold War was a sustained political and military tension between the Western Bloc, led by the United States of America, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, known then as the Soviet Socialist Republic, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR, now Russia. The Cold War emerged from the end of World War II in 1945. It is cold by the absence of direct combat by both sides. The US and the Soviet Union did not fight, but they inspired other nations to fight. Proxy wars. On the side of America was Britain, France, West Germany, and other Western powers. Eastern Europe, countries like Poland, Hungary, Romania, were allies of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, but that has changed. Poland is now with NATO. A reason for the war is the United States' ambition to expand its overseas trade in the countries of Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union considered this as an affront in its sphere of influence. A fallout of the Cold War is the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian war. The Cold War was a conflict of capitalism against communism. The struggle left poor countries at the mercies of big powers. The war ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, leaving devastations on the psyche of the world. Why the United States and the Soviet Union did not shoot live bullets at themselves? They engaged in proxy wars, sponsoring and supporting conflicts in Afghanistan, Angola, Vietnam, Korea, Ethiopia, and other countries. As a student of politics, I have studied Vietnam repeatedly, the Vietnam War. I've always wanted to go to Vietnam. I think in the next few weeks, I should be in Vietnam. I want to go to Vietnam. I don't just want to be a scholar of politics, just reading. I also want to be on the field, seeing the different parts of the world, gathering data. I'm a researcher, a broadcast researcher. So when you join my show, you test my mind, and I test your mind. We learn and we unlearn. Yes, at the end of the Cold War, the United States laughed last as it established its hegemony on the world. The Soviet Union collapsed, splitting into Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, and other smaller countries. The fall of communism is the explosion of market fundamentalism, causing Francis Fukuyama to assert that the world had reached a final bus stop ideologically, that liberal democracy is the final form of human government, and the end of history is the consolidation of capitalism in every corner of the world. Have you read that book, The End of History? I think when coming back into the country, I'm going to bring copies of the book. These are the kind of books you should be reading. I should find copies. And there is another book that you should be reading too. I will show you the book as we go. Yes. The United States laughed last, and Fukuyama said it was the end of history. That liberal democracy is the final form of human government, and that the end of history is the consolidation of capitalism in every corner of the world. There's a point I want you to take note of. That liberal democracy is the final form of human government. El Zakzaky disagrees with that point. I'm just laying a background to El Zakzaky. That liberal democracy is the final form of human government. The Shite movement ideologically disagrees with that notion. And we will get to that point. So this notion is challenged by the view that the efforts of the West to promote its values of democracy and liberalism as universal values, to maintain its military predominance, and to advance its economic interest, engender countering responses from other civilizations. It is termed the West versus the rest. The West versus the rest. Furthering this argument, M.Y. Akbar, an Indian Muslim scholar, states that the West's next confrontation is definitely going to come from the Muslim world. Quoting him, "It is in the sweep of the Islamic nations from Maghreb to Pakistan that the struggle for a new world order will begin." Can you see the Israeli-Hamas conflict? It is part of that struggle for a new world order. M.Y. Akbar predicted it, and we are seeing it. At a point, it was the rise of Al-Qaeda. It became the rise of ISIS. If you come to the West African sub-region, Islamic militants have taken over territories. You have Boko Haram. If you go to Sudan, you'll find them. Akbar is right that it is in the sweep of the Islamic nations from Maghreb to Pakistan that the struggle for a new world order will begin. Even in Nigeria, we see that struggle. During the elections, there was this argument, Muslim ticket. It's like Islam wants to dominate Christianity. It is part of the struggle. Growing conflict tied to Islam in the Middle East, the Sahel in Africa, and the fear of attacks in Europe and America give credence to the civilization clash theory. At some point, remember 9/11? The United States was attacked. So that clash of civilization prediction has come to pass. And one man that saw it coming is Samuel Huntington. Look at this book. Classic. The Clash of Civilization and the Remaking of World Order. This is the book of the day. Udara Book has about 10 copies of this book. It's just arrived. This book creates an understanding of the emergence of Boko Haram, the emergence of ISIS, Al-Qaeda. It is written by an American scholar. He's an American. He wrote it first as an article in Foreign Affairs. Samuel Huntington, The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order. Henry Kissinger, a former United States Secretary of State, says the book is one of the most important books to have emerged since the end of the Cold War. Let me tell you more about the book. In 1993, the esteemed journal Foreign Affairs published an article entitled The Clash of Civilizations, written by Harvard professor Samuel Huntington. According to the journal's editors, it went on to generate more discussion than anything they had published since the Second World War. You know, I subscribe to Foreign Affairs, And it was when I read Huntington's article that I paid for the subscription. It is a rich resource. In the article that later became a book, Huntington posed the question whether conflict between civilizations would dominate the future of world politics. In this book, he gives the answer, showing not only how clashes between civilizations are the greatest threat to world peace, but also how an international order based on civilizations is the best safeguard against war. Since September 11, his thesis has seemed even more prescient and acute. The clash of civilizations and the remaking of world order is now recognized as a classic study of international relations in an increasingly uncertain world. So I recommend the book to you. Get it on Udara Books. You can get it through the WhatsApp numbers pinned to this broadcast. Just send us a WhatsApp message and your book will be sent to you anywhere in Nigeria. We deliver books to all parts of Nigeria. So, with this book, I have laid the groundwork for the discussion on El Zakzaky. From the 12th to the 14th of December 2015, there was bloodbath in Zaria. It started in a road clash between members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, IMN, and the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff, General Tukur Buratai. The Shite group, during a procession, blocked the road Nigeria's army chief was riding on. He was on official visit to the town. The military claimed that the roadblock was mounted to ease the assassination of the army chief, who escaped from the scene after soldiers dislodged the disciples of Ibrahim El Zakzaky. The army on the same day returned to teach the Shiites a bitter lesson. What was the bitter lesson? The army opened fire on the followers of El Zakzaky, and bodies littered the road. It was the army taking on the citizens. It was a day of death and blood. The army was not done. The army went to Gyalesu, the Gyalesu area, where the leader of the sect, El Zakzaky, lived. The army went there on a mop-up operation. The Nigerian army inflicted damage on the sect. This action resulted in the death of more members of the group, including Sheikh Mohammed Turi, the second in command to El Zakzaky. The army also fired shots into the body of Ibrahim Usman, the spokesman of the group. The group claims that about 1,000 of its members were killed between the 12th to the 15th of December 2015. The 2015 killing is a reenactment of a long-drawn crisis with a Muslim group that has denounced the secular nature of the Nigerian state. Zakzaky, since the formation of the movement in the 1980s, found himself in the black book of the state by his utterances and the audacity with which his followers carried out their religious duties. And this exuberance is mostly shown during their processions. These movements obstructed traffic and sometimes threatened public peace. So perhaps the military was saying, enough, we can't take this anymore. In 1978, let me take you into that time. In 1978, while El Zakzaky was a student of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, he was a leader of Nigeria's Muslim Student Society. In 1979, El Zakzaky became the national vice president of the Muslim Student Society. His journey to Iran in 1980 influenced his belief in Shia Islam. You know, the popular sect in Nigeria, the most popular sect in Nigeria is Sunni Islam. Shia Islam is in the minority in Nigeria. In Iran, Shia Islam is the majority. So El Zakzaky traveled to Iran in 1980 and was influenced and became a Shia Islam. His group in the 1980s and 1990s were involved in frequent clashes with Sunni sects in northern Nigeria for resisting Shite use of mosque for prayers and other activities. In July 2007, security forces destroyed the IMN headquarters in Sokoto after clashes between Sunni and Shia groups following the shooting of a popular Sunni cleric. Zakzaky, before his 2015 ordeal that lasted until recently, was involved in clashes with security forces. He was detained several times by successive military regimes for his anti-government rhetoric. He advocated for an Iran-style Islamic revolutionary government in Nigeria. You can see? So he disagrees with Nigeria's form of liberal democracy. He wanted an Iran-styled Islamic revolutionary government in Nigeria. In July 2014, 3 of his sons and 32 others were killed when soldiers opened fire on them during a procession in Zaria. That was towards the end of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's administration. In December 2015, he was attacked by the army in his house. He was fired at, he was arrested, his wife was arrested, and they were kept in protective custody. The protest in Kano and Kaduna that followed was a show of pain by the membership of the sect. Why the siege on Zakzaky's residence lasted? He was on the phone. Remember, I said the military came to his house. So while the house was being attacked by the military, Zakzaky was on the phone. He was on the phone talking with a top Iranian, explaining what was going on at the moment. You know, that call showed the international dimension of the conflict. So I want us to listen to Zakzaky having a telephone conversation with the Iranian on the day his house was attacked in December 2015.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Ya Sheikh Husseini here from Iran.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
How are you, my brother?
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, we heard about the story there. I wanted to know from you what happened.
Okay, right now we are under siege. For the last 12 hours they are shooting. In my house, they have destroyed our Husseiniya with the heavy bomb. And then they are now shooting my house. They are shooting the wall right now. Since yesterday in the night around, it is now almost 10 hours, 11 hours to be precise. They came here around 10.
Yes.
Started shooting all through the night. Up to now they are shooting.
Where are you now?
I'm inside the house.
So they are shooting at the house that you are staying in?
Yes.
So your life is in danger there?
Well, there is nothing I can do except Allah alone can deliver me, because there is no way out. They have already put the whole house in siege from every corner and they are shooting.
Inshallah, we will try to do our best there. How many people have been killed? You don't know?
Well, in this house they kill about 14. In the Hussein here they kill everybody there. And we don't know the numbers. And we don't know the numbers they kill in Hussein here. And they took some alive and killed them. They are about 30. By now we don't know whether those they have killed must have passed 60, 50. But they are still shooting.
Yes. Okay. So I will try to get connection with the authorities here in the government and see if we can do anything. Okay. Okay, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Inshallah. Okay. So we will do that. Okay. Inshallah. Okay. Please keep me. Do you have my number there?
Hmm?
Do you have my number there?
Yeah, you share the number.
Okay, please keep me informed every hour what's happening. Because I will just report now to the office of leader and also to Dr. Mustafavi and everyone. Okay?
Inshallah.
Salam. Salam.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Yes, that was El Zakzaky in his moment of fear, in his moment of anxiety. He needed to tell what he was going through. So we are reflecting on the Shite movement using the 2015 attack by the military. And it's also a reflection of politics and power. Islam is here. Are you a Muslim? How often do you study Islamic literature to broaden your knowledge You know, Islam is also anchored on politics. In fact, religion is anchored on politics. Who were those who took Jesus Christ out? They were politicians of the time, those who controlled society. So religion has always been tied to politics. Even Muhammad fought town leaders. So religion and politics go together. So when you see some of the clashes around the world, around religion, it's also about power and politics. It's about who controls what. The Ayatollah in Iran is the spiritual leader of the country. Is also the ultimate and supreme leader of the land. The president of the land must bend to his decision. Iran has a president, no doubt, but the supreme leader of Iran is the Ayatollah. So you can see politics and power. I'm trying to see your messages. Ibikunleo Lusuyi Ayodele says, on this assertion about the economic situation in the country vis-a-vis the privileged ones in the society, I cannot but agree with the works of the writer. I mean, you agree with Claude Ake. You know, those who enjoy the privileges of society always resist reforms because the system favors them, so they don't want reforms. You get the point? That is why you see we've been calling for the restructuring of the Nigerian state. Those that this kind of structure favor have been resisting it. Sometimes they can be an ethnic group, and the elite of that ethnic group are the ones enjoying the largesse of the state. So they don't always want reforms. That is why to get reforms, you also need radical leaders to take on the establishment. Osazuwa Oyigwe, good to have you here. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Ademola Adeyemi said, wow, I thought as much the way you are linking the physics formula to Nigerian politics and system of government. Yes, I have that background in science. Ademola says, thank you for giving us your academic background. Not like the current certificate forger, that everything about him is questionable. No, I can always produce my certificate anytime. In fact, recently, while the case was going on, I remember that I have not collected my MSc certificate from the University of Ibadan. I had to rush down, and I collected it, and I made sure that the signatories were the present signatories, and not fish out in the future. You know, so I have all my certificate intact. You know, even my primary school testimonial, I've kept everything intact, because a precedent has been set and it will reflect in the future. So go and get your certificate if you don't have them. And if you have misplaced them, make sure you go through the right processes. Swear an affidavit, then go back to the school and collect it. If you have changed your name, correct everything. Yes. I'm discussing El Zakzaky. And you don't have to be a Muslim to study Islamic literature. No. The book I'm reading at the moment I'm reading this book, you can see it's like green and white. The history of the spread of Islam in the Niger-Benue confluence area. Why did I pick up this book to read? In recent time, I've been worried. The level at which bandits in Benue and Plateau are going, it seems they are taking over those states. And I'm saying how? Where is government? Where is the military? So I said, okay, there is a clash of civilization going on in the Benue. Some might say Fulani headsmen. But another way to look at it is also Christianity versus Islam. So I decided to pick up this book, The History of the Spread of Islam in the Niger-Benue confluence area, Igala land, Ibira land, and Lokoja, 1900 to 1960, written by Ahmed Rufai Muhammad. Yeah, that's the book here. You can see it. The book presents a stimulating historical discourse on the introduction and diffusion of Islam in Igala land, Ibira land, and Lokoja between 1900 and 1960. While detailing the impact of Islam on the social, cultural, political, and spiritual life of the three communities and their reactions to it, the work unpacks a variety of refreshing themes and the thread linking them in a comparative framework. The challenges and opportunities that Islam brought to the communities are made explicitly clear in this book. In a novel departure from previous studies, a compelling thesis on colonialism as an important vehicle through which Islam spread within the confluence region is made clear in this book. The coincidence of active views of both Islam and Christianity in these communities, as well as the reasons for the greater appeal of the former to the people, is also appraised. This book is an indispensable text for scholars, students of religious history, for those who study interfaith relations and discourse, and for other social scientists interested in the dynamics of religious movements and their implications for Nigerian politics and society in general. You can buy this book through the WhatsApp numbers pinned to this post. The numbers are there. They are also the studio numbers. I'm ready to hear your views. I have talked about the clash of civilization. I have talked about the Cold War. I have moved into El Zakzaky. Let me hear your views. And you can also talk about contemporary matters. So I've introduced two books to you already. Clash of Civilization, Samuel Huntington, and the History of the Spread of Islam in the Niger-Benue confluence areas. So get them through the WhatsApp numbers. And you can get other interesting books. Go to udarabooks.com. udarabooks.com. And you'll find interesting books on politics, history, and power. So the lines are open. Call in and let me hear from you. El Zakzaky. He was released sometime last year, but the security are still watching over him. Shehu Sani was the senator representing Kaduna Central when the army ruthlessly took on the Islamic Movement of Nigeria. Shehu Sani was appalled by the action of the army. El-Rufai was the governor of Kaduna State. Shehu Sani said the army should have reacted with less force by respecting the fundamental rights of the victims. Sani reminds us of the lessons of history as he worries about the violent conflicts in northern Nigeria. At the time, he warned the state not to reopen another front of violence like that of Boko Haram. The Sultan of Sokoto, Saad Abubakar, at the time called for caution to avoid the pitfalls of the past. In a statement signed by the Secretary General of the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, the Sultan said that Nigeria is facing serious problems. The least expected is a conflict between the military and the Shiites. In spite of claims and counterclaims, the Sultan wanted the military to exercise restraint, drawing attention to past insurgencies. He called on the state to learn from the past. Sheikh Sani and the Sultan at the time reminded us of the fragility of the Nigerian state and the consequences of violent actions. You could say that from that military onslaught, violence continued to rise under Buhari. Bandits came, ravaging the northeast, the north central, the northwest. Under Tinubu, they are still on rampage. Violence begets violence, especially unguarded state violence. In 2015, Daniel Bekele, African director at Human Rights Watch, wondered how a roadblock by angry young men could justify the killings of hundreds of people. He called the reaction of the army a brutal overreaction planned to deal with the minority Shia group. At the time, the Islamic Human Rights Commission, a United Kingdom-based Muslim advocacy organization, dragged President Muhammadu Buhari, the Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, and the Chief of Army Staff Tukur Buratai to the International Criminal Court, ICC, over the alleged killing of at least 1,000 followers of the Shite group led by Ibrahim El Zakzaky. In an interview on Iran's Press TV, Mashoud Shadjari of Islamic Human Rights Commission staunchly defended the movement of El Zakzaky, claiming that the Nigerian state was bent on eliminating its members. So let's listen to Mashoud Shadjari talking about Zakzaky. Remember, we are reflecting on the past.
Mashoud Shadjari, thank you so much for being with us. First of all, I would like to hear the latest of what you have, because I know, Mr. Shadjari, that you're in close contact with people on the ground there in Nigeria.
Unfortunately, there is not a lot of information coming out, because after they have stormed the house and the Husseiniya, what we are hearing is majority of people in there were actually were shaheed, and they were attacked and they died. And there are rumors that the Sheikh himself has been arrested, but there is no confirmation of this. And unfortunately, the numbers of those who have been killed is going to be increasing very rapidly, because it seems that not many people survived the onslaught on both the house and the Husseiniya. And really, what is really so disgusting is the claims of Nigerian army, which they say that this whole thing started by attack and assassination against one of the top generals. And the reality is that this seems to be very clearly well organized, well ahead of time. And, we have not heard of even a single soldier being injured, let alone being killed, while we are hearing that at least 100 of Zakzaky's supporters have been killed. And the shooting started yesterday, and it continued for 26 hours. And moved from Hosseiniya into sort of resident of Sheikh Zakzaky, and there is no justification for this. The Nigerian armed forces are becoming judge, jury, and executioner, and they're going around killing innocent people, many women and children among the ones who have died in both of these locations.
What are the latest numbers that you have?
Yes, that's Masood Shajari talking about Zakzaky. I remember at the time when the army made that a villain, the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs appointed Dawood Noibi, the chairman contact committee, to look into the events of December 2015. I remember going to him when he returned to Ibadan to ask him what really transpired.
You are the chairman of the contact committee set up by the Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs to look at what happened in Zaria. How far has your committee gone?
The committee has met the Chief of Army Staff along with his lieutenants. We have also met the Inspector General. We are waiting for invitation to meet the Attorney General. These were the three important functionaries that we wrote to for an opportunity to hear from them exactly what happened, and for an opportunity to meet Zakzaky himself and some of his followers.
What was the interaction with the Chief of Army Staff like?
Well, our job was basically fact-finding. It was a very successful interaction in that we wanted to know exactly from the side of the army what happened on that particular occasion and what followed the following day. And they showed us videos of some of the things that happened. We also asked them a few questions about the whereabouts of Ibrahim Zakzaky and some of his followers who might have been arrested, and also we wanted to know how they handled the bodies of those who died. But basically, we wanted to know exactly what led to the clash between Zakzaky's group and the army.
So was the army able to provide answers to the many questions?
Well, they provide answers to most of the questions. The others, they were not able to answer because they were not in a position to answer, particularly with regard to the whereabouts of Zakzaky and some of his followers, because they had handed them to the civilian authorities.
What about the corpses of those that were killed? Did they tell you where they were buried or if they have been buried at all?
Well, they explained that their job was to ensure that they maintained peace, and when the clash was concluded, the bodies and those that were wounded had been handed back to the civilian authorities. They were not able to give any further information about.
By civilian authorities, do they mean the governor?
Well, our understanding was the police, and that was why we also wanted to meet the police and the Attorney General.
And when you met the inspector?
Yes, that's Professor Dawood Noibi in 2015. How time flies. 8 years ago. Today we know better. But I'm reflecting on the events of December. I can call this like part 1 of the El Zakzaky struggle. It was clear that El Zakzaky had Iranian support at the time. Iran, like the United States and other countries, have mastered the art of interfering in the affairs of other countries when their interest is threatened. So this could be the reason George Bush classified Iran as an axis of evil.
The goal is to prevent regimes that sponsor terror from threatening America or our friends and allies with weapons of mass destruction. Some of these regimes have been pretty quiet since September the 11th, but we know their true nature. North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction while starving its citizens. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. The Iraqi regime has plotted to develop anthrax and nerve gas and nuclear weapons for over a decade. This is a regime that has already used poison gas to murder thousands of its own citizens, leaving the bodies of mothers huddled over their dead children. This is a regime that agreed to international inspections, then kicked out the inspectors. This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. By seeking weapons of mass destruction, these regimes pose a grave and growing danger. They could provide these arms to terrorists, giving them the means to match their hatred. They could attack our allies or attempt to blackmail the United States. In any of these cases, the price of indifference would be catastrophic. We will work closely with our coalition to deny terrorists and their state sponsors the materials, technology, and expertise to make and deliver weapons of mass destruction. We will develop and deploy effective missile defenses to protect America and our allies from sudden attack.
Yes, that was going back into time. In that speech, George Bush, then President of the United States, only reflected Samuel Huntington's prediction, clash of civilization. He used the term axis of evil, and the term is relative. It depends on the side you belong. To Iran, no country can be more evil than the United States. Iran feels the United States is on a mission to bring the countries of the world under its hegemonic control. Islam may not be under attack from Western powers, but the foreign policy posture of the United States in the Middle East indicates a comprehensive plan to take Islam out of politics by enthroning a Westphalian ordinance in that troubled part of the world. But that is not working. It is not working. The leadership of Saudi Arabia is fully Islamic. There's nothing like democracy in Saudi Arabia, the home of Islam. That is why if you read this book, Blood and Oil, you see the book, you can see the way the leader of Saudi Arabia is dressed here. Mohammed bin Salman's ruthless quest for global power. Blood and Oil. You will see Islam and politics in this book. This is a new arrival. This book just came into the store, udarabooks.com. Read this book and you will see the emerging Islamic powers. Perhaps someday they might control the world. Remember, the Ottoman Empire controlled the world at some point until the collapse of the empire. The collapse of the empire gave Arab countries the opportunity to demand for sovereignty. So in this book, The Blood and Oil, you read about Mohammed bin Salman's ruthless quest for global power. The explosive story of how Mohammed bin Salman and his entourage grabbed power in the Middle East and acquired a network of Western allies, high-flying Western bankers, Hollywood figures and politicians, all eager to help the charming Crown Prince. I recommend this book to you. You can get it through the WhatsApp numbers pinned to the broadcast. And I'm expecting your call. Are we having calls? So call, let's hear from you. It's not just about me, it's also about you. Tell me what you know. Let me hear from you. Make your point. Engage the radio man. Teach me. I'm ready to learn. So call the numbers pinned to the post. Through astonishing interviews with powerful insiders, Blood and Oil reveals how the prince and his cabal played the Saudi economy and manipulated the state to stamp out dissent before allegations of his extreme brutality and excess began to slip out. With breathtaking stories of dealings from Riyadh to London, Paris to New York, this is a thrilling investigation that penetrates the corridors, yachts, and hotel rooms of power. In a world of extreme wealth, this decisive and dangerous new leader is making a bid for Saudi transformation that will reverberate for decades to come. I just read the description on the back cover of the book, Blood and Oil. Get your copy on Udara Books. You'll get it and you will like it. It's about politics and power, history, talking about El Zakzaky, and talking about world politics. Militant groups in the Middle East, groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, see the United States policy in the Middle East as the reason they must mobilize resistance against it and its allies, especially Israel. In what has become a clash of cultures, terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS emerged to stake their claims. Is the Middle East was for it. Remember, I started by also looking at M.Y. Akbar's prediction that the West's next confrontation is definitely going to come from the Muslim world. The battle is on the war fields of the Middle East, and you can see Israel ransacking Gaza. The war can also be fought in America, as we saw in 9/11, and selected targets in Europe and other parts of the world. Africa is now immersed in the consequences. The quarrel is worsened by the insistence of the West that the best hope for peace in the world is the expansion of freedom in the entire world. The anger against this notion led to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. That revolution broke American stranglehold on Iran and installed a theocratic and quasi-democratic government in that country. The Iranian Revolution was also a mission of the Shite to express and spread their doctrine in the mixture of theology and politics. Ayatollah Khomeini, leader of the revolution, blamed imperialist and tyrannical leaders for self-seeking and for stopping the creation of a united Arab nation governed by divine laws. He attacked the West for its false premise of international relations and called for relations between nations based on the ideals of Islam. Khomeini's view reflects that of Hassan al-Banna, founder of the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, and that of his successor, Shite Qutb. The Muslim Brotherhood's call for Arab unity in the face of Western domination was a factor in the Iranian Revolution of the 1970s. Iran remains a theocratic state with the Ayatollah as the supreme leader. How El Zakzaky and his followers intend to achieve the Iranian model in a Nigeria with a majority Sunni Muslim group and a huge and influential Christian population remains to be seen. Why the problem of Islamic-inspired terrorism has gone viral, affecting countries like Nigeria and Somalia, both battling the devastation of Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab, Shite tradition continues to grow, and the Nigerian state is trying to check it. The Islamic movement in Nigeria, led by the radical Ibrahim El Zakzaky, is an example of Iranian influence on religious culture in Nigeria. But, as we have seen in recent time, the long years of Shiite brand of Islamic dominance in Zaria, in Kaduna State, got a heavy heat. Why paying the price for confronting the military? The Shiites in Nigeria find themselves on the street protesting and asking for freedom. Freedom of worship, freedom of association. I remember that even after the 2058 onslaught on the Shite, the 2015 onslaught on the Shite, in April 2018, the Secretary, Academic Forum of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, Abdullahi Musa, said in spite of attempts to break their willpower and force them to jettison their call for El Zakzaky's release at the time, the sect will continue its protests. He said government is trying to cause them to take up arms, like the Boko Haram insurgents, and challenge Nigeria's democratic values as well as constituted authorities. His words, "We cannot stop now. We will continue our protests. The government is bent on killing our members. We'd rather die in public over the social injustice meted on us than die at home without the world knowing why we were killed." Who was El Zakzaky? As a student at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. In this 2018 interview, his classmate at the Department of Economics, Samson Olalere, explains the El Zakzaky he knows. So let's listen to a part of Samson Olalere's interview.
The program is State Affairs. My guest is Samson Olalere, an economist and a politician. Mr. Olalere, it is good to have you on State Affairs.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here, Mr. Bello.
I guess you're still following the Shite Nigerian state brouhaha, some would say.
Yeah, I do.
And one name keeps coming to mind, right, and that is Ibrahim Zakzaky.
El Zakzaky.
Your classmate at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria.
Yes, yes.
What was it like having him as a classmate at Ahmadu Bello University?
Yeah, the irony of it all was that in the class, he used to be a very quiet person, but outside the class, when it comes to this religious bigotry, you can always find him there. But in the class, a quiet person, just sitting down like every other student, not even very forthcoming in the class.
So you never give anybody any problem in class?
As far as the class is concerned, no.
Was he a very scholarly student?
Not really. Just you can refer to him as an average student. Just the normal average student.
Well, if you check some records on the internet, they said he was a first-class student. In fact, he graduated with first class, just that the university did not give him the certificate.
That's not true. I can assertively say that El Zakzaky never finished from Zaria. The class was class of 1979 class, economics class of 1979. He started a riot just in the beginning of that year. We were to graduate by June 79. He started a riot and then absconded from the university. That is the truth. So he never sat for the final exam.
Are you talking about the Kegite Muslim Society Student Association?
Yeah, that was the riot. All right. He then was a member of the Muslim MMS, the Muslim Student Society or something, an officer of that. I don't know whatever office he held, but he was an officer. So that riot was instigated by them. The Kegites, it's a federal university. The Kegites wanted to have their gyration. Then the Muslim students said no, they cannot have gyration. And those ones insisted. So the Muslim students went and attacked the Kegites.
Muslim students led by
Zakzaky. Yes, he was part of the group. He was a leader of the MSS.
He was the Secretary General of MSSN.
Well, I know he was an officer. He should have, maybe the Secretary General or something, but he was an officer of the MSS then.
How would you describe a young man who was so quiet in class and so radical outside the classroom?
Right.
How would you define such a person?
Well, religious radicalism. That's what I will call it. You know, we have a lot of them that way, that cannot tolerate others when it comes to religion. And that's the way I look at him. In the class, well, we don't talk religion in the economics class, whatever. So he will sit down like every normal student, listen to lectures. The irony is that, there are times you have to contribute. I've never seen him contributing when it comes to academic discourse, But outside, when it comes to this religious thing and bigotry, that's what I will call it, you can find him there. And that's why he could lead students against other students. Society, MSS is a society. KEGA is also a registered society in a federal university. So I don't think anybody should have had a right to want to deprive those ones of their own association. But that was what happened then.
Was he the only radical student in your class at the time?
Well, when we talk of radicalism, we'll be looking at the student unionism more then in the university, rather than the religious something. We'll have other radicals when you talk of student unionism, talking about the nation, and then student participation in moving the country forward. We have such radicals in the class, but those ones are focused towards governance, towards economic emancipation of the nation, and so you can really see those ones.
What happened during that clash between the Kegites and the Muslim Student Society of Nigeria? Did El Zakzaky and co run into the mosque at any time?
They did. You see, after the riot, because what did happen was that the Kegites insisted that they have a right to gyrate. Their program was supposed to usually it starts in the evening. The Muslim society also said no, they cannot hold it in the premises of the universities. So those ones, since they are registered association, they insisted and they held. So in the process of the Kega gyration, the MSS people led by El Zakzaky invaded the venue. So there was crisis. And both sides have sympathy. Now, it's a federal university. Why should that happen? And the next day after the riot, students rose up that no, that cannot happen in a federal university. Then before you know it, the thing degenerated.
And police had to come in?
Police had to come in. But what happened, about many of the leaders of the MSS, because eventually the university authority knew that they were the aggressors, and they wanted to get them arrested. So they ran into the mosque. The mosque is just by the gate at the university. So
you were sure El Zakzaky was one of those that ran into the mosque?
Oh, definitely. I was so sure because, actually, I don't know. I was so sure. I was a member of the Kegites, so I knew what did happen. And I knew that he left because I was there at the Kegites generation. And we also made up our mind that thing was to hold.
Did you see El Zakzaky among those that attacked the Kegites?
I told you he's my classmate, so I know him very well, and he led the group into the hall.
But they were not armed?
No, they were armed. They had knives, they had sticks, and they had cutlasses.
Were the Kegites armed too?
No, Kegites were not armed.
So did you guys run?
Well, it was a crisis. People ran out, They pursued, and then there was fisticuffs.
Nobody was killed?
No, nobody was killed.
Was anybody injured?
No, there was no physical injury.
So the next day the police had to intervene?
Yeah, because the next day students were divided. Some were thinking, what right does a religious body have to deprive other people, other associations from doing what they want to do in a federal university? It's not as if they were going to disrupt the university. Well, you have a right to belong to association, and then you have a way you run your association, so you don't have a right to. So there was serious division. So about 70% of the students then in Zaria were against what the Muslim student did, Muslim Student Association. So they were at the side, behind and then trying to tell the university authority that it is a federal university. If Kegites were not registered, it would have been a different thing, but it's not even at the purview of the MSS to disrupt their association. So that's generated into riot.
The leaders ran into the mosque.
Yes, they did.
Did the police go into the mosque?
No,
to arrest them?
No, they did not. Because I don't know. I think they said there's a law that does not permit you to go. Once they run into a church or a mosque, you can't go in. But if they come out, you can arrest. So there's a post office just by the gate. The police were stationed there,
waiting for them.
Probably they will come out.
Did they come out?
Well, we never knew what they didn't come out. They were never arrested. That is the truth. But the next thing we heard was that they have been flown out of the country.
Flown out of the country?
Yes.
Was that how El Zakzaky found himself in Iran?
He went to Iran. That was the period of Ayatollah Khomeini. That was the
period of the Iranian Revolution.
All right. So they took them. There were about between 9 and 10 of them who were the leaders of the MSS then.
How did students know that they were in Iran?
No, you can be too sure that.
All right. If you want to listen to that interview, the full version, you'll find it on my YouTube page. Go on at Obilo YouTube page and you would find it. The Zakzaky group is yet to follow the path of Boko Haram. They have been peaceful in their protests, and they are not giving up. They keep making their demands. However, when the past is mentioned, the case of the dissident Muhammad Mawa, known as Meitai Sini, comes to mind. By the time he arrived in Kano in 1945 from Cameroon, it was a country in a struggle for independence from colonialism that he met. His attacks on the government and the traditional institutions in the north was bold and proactive that the Emir of Kano caused his deportation to Cameroon. He returned to Nigeria in 1966 at the Emir's death, more acidic than ever. Today, we know the consequences of Meitai Sini. But let me make this point as I round off. It's up to the Nigerian state to ask itself, can violence solve deep issues of religion and ethnicism? That is the point the Islamic Movement of Nigeria makes. The reason the members say the state should obey court rulings at different times, especially rulings granted to the group. As Zakzaky was in prison and the court granted orders, the government did not release Zakzaky until towards the tail end of Muhammadu Buhari's government. Up to this point, Nigeria has failed to properly counter the narrative of different groups, be them religious or ethnic. The state believes that the use of the military is the best way to change extreme views. But this hasn't worked, as the country repeatedly finds itself fighting internal insurgencies that blossoms from radical initiative. You know, sometimes I can be termed a radical broadcaster because of my strong belief in certain ideas. I recommend this book to you, Understanding Modern Nigeria, Understanding the Conflicts of the Time. Yes. I recommend this text, Understanding Modern Nigeria, Ethnicity, Democracy and Development, written by Toyin Falola. This book sets out to explain why we are where we are. The book provides one of the most comprehensive and insightful analysis of the complexities of democracy, development, and state building in Nigeria. Going beyond narratives of post-colonial dysfunction, this book highlights the contradictions, ambiguities, and positive potentials of Africa's most populous country. The depth of analysis and policy prescriptions make the book essential reading for anyone who seeks to understand modern Nigeria. You'll find it on udarabooks.com, udarabooks.com. And that description was written by Bonnie Ihawo. He's a senator, William McMaster Chair in Global Human Rights, McMaster University. Classic work of history, politics, and power. You'll join me on Friday for another edition of the program. My name is Edmond Obilo. I worked with Ayo Ashimolowo, Samuel Kalu Tosin, Ayeni Oladile and Marian Giwa to bring you this broadcast. Join us on Friday at 2 p.m. for our fresh broadcast. On Friday, I want to look at the devastations in the Niger Delta. I want to look at oil-producing communities and then walk down the history lane to serve as a reflection. So I'll leave you with this interview with Femi Aborishade. I'll be back on Friday at 2 p.m. Thank you for being there. I am Edmond Obilo.
El Zakzaky. He was discharged and acquitted by the court.
I believe that judgment is a victory over tyranny. Victory over tyranny in the sense that once again the court in Kaduna has vindicated El Zakzaky and his wife that they are innocent of the trumped-up charges against El Zakzaky and the wife. The court has held that the prosecutor could not link El Zakzaky and his wife to any of the offenses, and therefore the court upheld the no-case submission filed on their behalf by their lead counsel, Femi Falana, SAN. We should recall that earlier in the case, in the charge filed against them by the federal government ordered their release and even awarded a cost of 25 million naira each in favor of El Zakzaky and his wife, making 50 million naira. The judgment against the federal government up to today has not been obeyed. So far, El Zakzaky and the wife are judgment creditors against the federal government. Then the Kaduna state government filed another set of charges, which the court in Kaduna, the High Court in Kaduna, has now vindicated El Zakzaky and the wife that they are innocent to the extent that none of the offenses could be linked to them. It shows that El Zakzaky and the wife are innocent of the charges. It has also vindicated the courageous protests, peaceful protests by supporters of El Zakzaky and his wife.
State Affairs